Angel is brought to you by Salesforce Essentials. Jumpstart sales and support by leveraging the world's #1 CRM at a startup price point of just $25 a month per user. Go to salesforce.com/angel for an additional 50% off and a free onboarding call. And LinkedIn. You already know LinkedIn as the world's largest professional network. It's also a better way to find great talent. Go to linkedin.com/angel to get a $50 credit towards your first job post. Terms and conditions apply.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Angel, the podcast. This is the podcast that goes with my book. You can buy the book angelthebook.com. The podcast Angel can be found at Angel Podcast. If you do a search for Angel on your favorite podcast player, you will get podcasts about angels in our lives, the religious ones. It has nothing to do with angel investing. So
Or is it?
Or is it? Who knows? But if you do a search for Angel Calacanis, you will find this podcast. But you can go to Angel Podcast and get all the links to your popular players. Today on the program, one of my favorite humans and a fantastic product designer and a fantastic investor, Mr. Dave Morin, is back on the program. I don't know when you were last on This Week in Startups, but years ago.
I think it was during Path, so it must have
During
been...
Path,
Yeah,
wow.
it must have been 6, 7, maybe even eight years ago.
It is so incredible, the legacy of Path. For people who don't know, you were famous for being part of the team that helped build Facebook.
Yeah.
And you were there from years...
2006 until 2010.
So pre-public.
Yeah.
Maybe you were employee 50 or...
Yeah, I'm not actually sure what the number is. I did an interview.
What office were you in?
The first one. I did an interview recently and CNN found number 29. I don't think that's accurate. I think it's later than that, but
Was this
first,
the office
first 100 for sure.
On University Avenue? Or?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was it like when there were 50 or less people at Facebook?
How
How would you describe the atmosphere?
electric.
Huh.
Yeah.
Anything's possible?
Yeah, there was sort of a sense of, it's interesting because we were actually quite small in context. We had a few million users, and at the time that was actually a lot. And but in the grand scheme of today, it's nothing. But we were only working on college campuses back then, and so our market was the 10 million college students that go to college in the United States. And so we had like half the market, and we were very excited to have half the market.
Halfway there.
Yeah. And we didn't think of it as I think we had these grand ambitions, like maybe we could change the world, but it was very much like that was like a mid-20s group of mid-20s kids in an office above a, restaurant in Palo Alto. And so, there was kind of this frenetic youth energy of the 25-year-old sets of, Mark was 19.
That's crazy. Mark was 19 years old.
Yeah.
How would you describe him at that age? I mean, he was a kid, obviously, but he's super mature, right?
Yeah. You mean now or back then? Yeah, I mean, back then, certainly. I mean, Mark's always been one of the smartest people that I've ever met in my entire life. And that hasn't changed,
Quick? Like very easy to process stuff, or book smart? How would you describe his genius? Or would you describe it as genius or just super focused? How would you describe it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a combination of book smart, he's very well studied and read, but also like incredible sort of foresight, forward thinking, but in a way that is uncommon. You don't meet many people where you truly believe there are 3 to 4 steps. You hear this about chess masters, right? Yeah. They can see three steps ahead. Mark was always playing multi-dimensional chess and could see, it was like he could see the whole board and think through all the different options. And it wasn't just processing information quickly. It was like an ability to kind of like see the whole game in a way that most people don't. Obviously also technically gifted. I mean,
he could write code.
Yeah, you don't run into many founders that can do both, right? And then I think there's also this thing which he's enormously determined. His determination and competitive will is, I think it's empirically proven at this point. Is arguably best in the world, and so just an enormous competitor.
preternatural? Is that the word?
Preternatural?
Preternatural, I think is the word. Like,
Really?
it means like just above like the normal human condition, I think.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of is almost like a world-class athlete in a way.
Yeah.
Like there's this drive and kind of like unlimited energy that's pretty amazing. And that's pretty cool. I guess the other thing I would say is, a lot of people don't know this, but Mark has a really big heart, and he's actually like I've always viewed it that his heart's generally in the right place. And like, most people don't see that side of him. I think it's cool that he's talking a lot more in public this year.
He's doing a podcast, in fact.
Yeah. And I think that's good, because my experience of working with him was that he always made you better, and, I've worked with leaders of different kinds, and Mark was one of those people who, when you would go to him for feedback or to do a product review or something, sometimes they were difficult, but more often than not, you would spend like a really long time debating things, right? Like, and you would leave either that conversation or a series of 10 or 100 conversations over an entire year, having thought through every single possible way to think about something. And I don't know, you don't hear that about a lot of leaders. You hear that they just tell you what to do, and like that's
Steve Jobsian, like maybe comes down from God. Who knows if that's true too? Because people forget these companies are filled with humans.
Yeah.
And then this mythology starts. The person tends to clam up and maybe get on the defensive, circle the wagons. People around them don't talk.
Yeah.
That seems to have happened to Zuck as well. Like, he kind of clammed up a little bit, like not talking to the public. And then it leads to everybody to question, what is his motivation?
Yeah, and I think that
what drives him?
One of the things that I try to say, and having done a couple of podcasts recently, is that Facebook's a difficult company and it's a difficult brand. And the reason why is that it's human. It's, what is Facebook? Facebook is this like map of all of humanity and all of its connections and all of the interactions between all of those humans. And we're
good,
all
bad, and in between.
And we're all human, and we all know that we do good things, we do bad things, we make mistakes. Every one of us is making mistakes, like even with the people closest to us in our lives. Every single day you miscommunicate, right? And so here you are sitting at the center of a system where it's just like full of humans trying to communicate with each other.
Yeah.
And so the brand is always, I think, going to feel very flawed because of that.
Yeah.
It's human.
And Twitter has that as well, right?
Yeah,
Twitter
absolutely.
has it as well, where, you want people to have freedom of speech.
Yeah.
You want certain people to have anonymity because they might need it, and you want free expression. But with these systems at scale, it seems they always tend to break down. So given your experience with Path, Twitter being a user, and having helped build Facebook, two of the, top 5 most legendary social products in the world, do you think the world should be connected, or do you think groups of people should be connected? Because it seems like Zuckerberg now is saying, you know what, maybe everybody should kind of be connected, but maybe we should break people into smaller groups, and that would be more manageable. How do you think about it? Because you seem to have this Dunbar number, 50-person, 100-person limit was your spin on Path, and now Zuckerberg, 5 years later, is copying you again. He's really studies your approach, and I don't mean that to deride him, more as a compliment to you.
Yeah.
Do you think that connecting everybody is a good idea now that we're in year 15 of that experiment?
I think that, just like I just said, this is very human. One of the stories that I always like to tell is that in 2006, we had this problem where the narrative in the public was, if you join Facebook and you post the wrong thing, you might get fired, because there were all of these people that were getting fired. And anybody that was around the internet business back then remembers this narrative. Like there were people getting fired, and it was almost always for having a photo of you drinking a beer on the weekend. And this went on for like 6 months or a year. And then after a year, I don't know how long the actual time period is, but it was some period of time, more and more people started having photos of themselves, not just hanging out with their family or their friends, but having fun on the weekends and going to Las Vegas or going and golfing or whatever. And strangely, what started to happen is the norm shifted. everyone started to realize, oh, everybody drinks on the weekends with their friends, right?
Yeah.
And it was this strange thing where like suddenly the norm shifted. And so the system had to start to account for that, right? Or maybe it didn't at all. It just did its thing and changed the norm. And so, okay, like now people don't care that, people have a photo drinking. And so you see this kind of play out over and over in the Facebook story, whether it was the very beginning when Mark started it, his first product at Harvard was this product I think it was called Face Mash or something. And if you look at the original article from launching Facebook at Harvard, he literally says, I got in trouble for launching this other thing. They told me that it needed to have this, this list of privacy things. So I built those in and launched this new thing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the story like forever with Facebook is like society uses whatever the current tool set is. And then some norms change, some don't. And then things need to evolve in the system. And so Facebook's been pretty good, I think, at like hearing that feedback and then making the necessary changes. So your question is more like, well, where are we now?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's good that the world is connected to, a network. It's kind of amazing that I could like pick this phone up right now and post a tweet, and who knows, it could end up in every country in the world, like, or no one, right? Like that's like kind of amazing. And that's the case for anyone with a mobile phone. Yeah. Like that wasn't possible 20 years ago, right? And you had to have like this equipment or something to get a message out, right? So
broadcast studio. That's
really positive.
Satellites. Yeah.
But and I think we've done a lot of experiments, and I mean, you and I have invested in or built. Yeah. It's almost hard to catalog the number of use cases that we've tried to build that are social in nature on the internet. And some of them got really big. Some of them didn't work out at all. Yeah. Some of them became the ones that carried these networks to like the scale that they're at. And then they get to that size and they need to add new use cases. And so where are we now? I don't know. I think that in a lot of ways, a lot of these use cases that everybody's talking about today are already around, right? Like Facebook groups is one of the largest products on the internet. Nobody really talks about it that way, but I think you can look in their filings. I mean, it's like, I think there's north of 2.5 billion people using various Facebook groups. And it's not like they just built that product, today or because Mark, has shifted the strategy. Like that product's always been around. And same goes for all these messaging apps and things like this. I think there's a lot more nuance to this than people are talking about right now. And for example, I saw that last week or 2 weeks ago, Facebook did a developers conference and they talked about how they're testing removing likes from Instagram in Canada. To me, that's the kind of stuff that's the most interesting. Like we can get into privacy and security. Like these are different things. There's security, meaning what technology literally secures the connection between your phone and the other phones and the servers. That's one question. Then there's questions of privacy, like who owns the data? Do you own the data? Can you move your data? There's all these data questions. But then there's this like more nuanced level, which is like, what is the actual implementation of the product? And what are the details, right? Like when you like something, who can see that you liked something? If you like something, does a push notification happen? There's all these sort of this like kind of
behavioral nuance.
Yeah, this nuance. Like you and I are interacting. You and I interacting right now. You're nodding or not nodding.
Yeah, thinking about it, raising my eyebrow.
And there's these things that go on, I think, in these social networks where there's feedback loops and then there's these signals that get sent out like that really do affect the way that you think about what you're posting into here or who's in the room with me. Like if you and I weren't alone or we didn't have a live stream, we might behave differently. Right? Sure. And so that's a thing I think about these networks, which we don't really, you don't see that talked about at all in the big public narratives, right? Like, should Facebook turn off the ability to see who your friends are on the profile or, those things.
When we get back from this quick commercial, let's get to brass tacks. We're both parents. What do you think about letting your kids into the things that, let's face it, you created in the world or help create? Sure. Do you want your kids to embrace this social and online world? When we get back on Angel. Scaling sales is so hard. You know that, but it's so essential. You need to scale your sales process, your team, and of course your software. You know Salesforce is the world's #1 customer relationship management platform, also known as CRM. And now with Salesforce Essentials, you get easy, out-of-the-box tools and support at a startup price point, and that's critical. Here are the benefits. You're going to get set up instantly, and you can easily scale your sales team by customizing with clicks. You don't need to write any code. You will get simple integrations that connect and integrate all of your data under one roof. And you'll have full cycle customer support, so you can automatically connect multiple support channels. You'll be able to automate busy work and repetitive tasks so you're not wasting your time. And customers can help themselves, of course, with a self-service support site. Everything you need is on one screen, so you can track emails, calls, and meetings from your inbox. Get access to the world's #1 CRM at a cost fit for a startup. Go to salesforce.com/angel, and you will get a 50% discount with an annual contract, and you'll get a free onboard training session. So go to salesforce.com/angel and get that 50% discount right now. Welcome back to Angel the Podcast. My guest today is Dave Morin, and we're not going to talk about Facebook the entire episode, but having Dave here, one of the earliest architects of Facebook, and not talking to him about Facebook and Path would be a huge omission on my part. So we're going to do another couple of minutes about talking about Facebook before we go into your unbelievable list of investments: Allbirds, Twitter, Venmo, Nest, Robinhood, Airtable, Pinterest, Postmates, Stripe. My Lord. What a collection of investments that you've made yourself as an angel and with Slow Ventures. So when we left our hero, that's you, on the break, I'm curious, Chamath says doesn't let his kids anywhere near it. Sean Parker, very vocal about, hey, we built these things to be addicting and they're too addicting. Chris Hughes, the co-founder and roommate of Zuckerberg, saying break up Facebook. And the WhatsApp founders, one of them saying you should delete Facebook. And the Instagram founders leaving in a huff over how Instagram was being architected, I think, or being treated. We don't know the full story there yet. But anyway, there's a collection of people who helped build the product and who are looking at it now saying, to varying degrees, maybe this is Frankenstein or maybe this needs to be rethought. How do you think about it when you think about your kids, my kids, our kids, embracing this future? Do you want them on social media? Do you think it needs to be tweaked a bit before they should go on it? This is when the rubber hits the road, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like your kids get a phone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've spent the last, since I sold Path, the primary project that I've been working on is called Sunrise. And it's a nonprofit initiative which is focused on trying to find cures for depression and all forms of mental health. And so through the process of working on that, I've came across a lot of science that I didn't know, and I've helped make some great science happen. But one of the things that I started to learn about pretty early on, this was around maybe 2015, 2016, was the burden, or burden maybe is the wrong way to put it, but the true tax that social media and the internet, I think, are having on not just our brains, but the brains of our kids. And it's a real thing. And I don't think I could come on here and pretend like it's not, or say that I don't feel responsibility to think about it, try to improve at least the conversation, if not, the implementation of some of these things.
We've created an organization to help with the issue, so obviously you care deeply about depression and people getting out of it. And the studies have shown that this can make people anxious. Yeah. And in fact, anxiety and depression are correlated. It can also make people depressed. So it is what it is. Yeah. I don't think anybody created social networks, whether it was MySpace or LinkedIn or Facebook or Path, to create anxiety in the world. They created it with good intention. Yeah. But there is a cost to it, which is anxiety.
No question.
What do you think is causing the anxiety? Is it the FOMO? Is it the constant interruptions and the screen time? What is your best guess as to it, and how does it affect you personally? How have you personally, Dave, managed your own usage of the technology?
Sure.
Have you slowed it down? Do you look at your, amount of posting and try to contextualize it and reduce it?
Yeah, I mean, I've really taken. I guess I could answer those in reverse order. I mean, my own personal configuration, I guess, of my phone. One of the key things that I tell everyone is to turn off all notifications except for your core communications like phone and your maybe one texting app that's like your main one. Mostly so that you're on offense and not defense, right? Like if you let the phone get your attention rather than you controlling your own attention, then you're always on defense. And that's kind of a bummer.
Yeah.
I also don't have any social apps on my first page. I put them in a folder on the second page. That's like a simple solution. There's some social apps that I just don't even have on my phone. Everyone's personal. I tend to not be fundamentalist about this. I don't really believe in fundamentalisms in general. Because if you take a fundamentalist position in anything, then it sort of takes over your mind and becomes this thing that you're focused on.
So you're not quitting Facebook, deleting Twitter, and deleting your account.
Yeah.
But put it on the second page. I removed my social accounts and put a Google Doc in my tray and Slack when I was writing the book, because I said, you know what? My companies need me.
Yeah.
And my book and my audience needs me to finish this goddamn book.
Yep.
And I wrote the book in 19 days. The primary writing of it was 19 days because I realized I was spending an hour to 2 hours on varying degrees of social messaging apps. And when I recaptured that, oh my Lord. And the book is such a great joy for me to look at and see it in Chinese and see it in Japanese and have people stop me on the street, that it's hard for me to stop using Twitter because I'm addicted to that.
Yeah.
But the long-term benefit of having that book in the world feels so much better to me than my daily Twitter. But I haven't figured out how to fundamentally change it. I could be Daniel Steele if I deleted my Twitter account.
Yeah, I don't think that anybody has a good answer to this, right? Because, and this I guess is maybe my more nuanced answer to your question, which is that my perspective on this is like, well, you ask these questions, is this good for the world? Like, do you let your kids, are you going to take a fundamentalist position on it? I have much more of a, I guess, transcend and include kind of notion on this, which is that, look, we're here now, right? Like we created the internet and we even created Wi-Fi. Like one of the things that I think about a lot is that social media gets almost too much of the burden of the hate. When there's places that I go, like I grew up in Montana. I like to go skiing in backcountry. Yeah. I'm like a outdoorsman, and there's places you can go and there's no internet, right?
That solves a social problem.
There's some lodges that I know of that have no internet, and it's actually got me thinking like, wow, like, did you know that the FCC makes it illegal to block Wi-Fi?
Yeah.
And that's kind of a strange thing when you think about it. It's like, well, I've seen this. You take Wi-Fi out of the equation and everyone's super social and hanging out with each other.
And they love it.
Yeah. And
it's like this incredible burden's been lifted.
Yeah. But you can't block it, which is like a really interesting thing. And so is it just social media's responsibility?
Yeah.
I don't know. So that's like one thing. I think that, I really think that if you look at history, right, when we shifted from the working a lot with our bodies and farms and sort of the industrial age, post World War II, and we shifted into working in office buildings, the notion of a gym did not exist in the first half of this century. And the gym became a thing after we all started working in offices and we were working in our brains, not our bodies anymore. And so you needed a gym. Right. If you look at the numbers last year, and you've got the Calm book over there, and we talked about Calm earlier. Calm's now worth $1 billion. Meditation apps were actually the most popular category in the App Store last year. Why is that happening? Why is the Juul cigarette the most popular thing for youth in the country? Well, you've got this new technology called the internet, and on it is these social media ecosystems, and they take all of our attention, and no matter what the business model, you spend a lot of your time in there.
They're addicting.
And there's a lot of social signaling going on, and so you get anxious, you get depressed,
FOMO,
all kinds of things, right? And so that creates a set of feelings that we don't have the tools to deal with, and we don't have the structures in society to deal with. And so what's happening? Well, you have SoulCycle spreading all over the country. You've got meditation apps in the App Store, the biggest category. You've got cannabis legalizing across the country.
Yeah, self-medicating, yeah.
Yeah. And so these tools are starting to appear
Yeah.
that help balance out this new technology, right? Because you can really get, I think, negative about like, well, the technology is causing all these problems, and those are important, yes. But you can also look on the other side and say, wow, like LGBTQ rights like moved forward faster than like I think it would have ever moved forward if we were still in the mass media age, right?
Yeah.
I've seen this happen with depression and anxiety. When I first started working on the project, I didn't want to talk to anybody publicly that I'm doing this. Like,
Did you feel a sense of shame or people would judge you differently? Because I assume that you started this because you have some level of depression or anxiety.
Yeah. I mean, I think that like I felt, whether it was rational or not, there's a stigma out there, and maybe people think of me differently, or, and then I started working on it, and every single entrepreneur that I sat down with told me their story of dealing with depression or going through this horrible time or being suicidal. And I started to realize, wow, not only am I not alone, I'm really not alone, right?
No, it seems to over-index in founders.
Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable. Like, we could really get into this, but
and we will.
This is kind of a, it's a very real thing, and so that stigma, I mean, just in the last 4 years has like so rapidly changed. And I don't think you could account it to anything other than social media.
Absolutely. When people are willing to go on social media and say, listen, I'm suffering from depression. I have anxiety. I'm in pain.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to get out of bed in the morning or do what I do. And people are like, but you're rich and powerful and you're in the NBA, right?
Yeah.
Like, who's the cat who played with LeBron James in Cleveland?
Oh, he was an amazing voice.
He wrote a whole
Michael
article
Phelps,
about it, or Michael Phelps,
yeah.
and you're like, wow, this great Olympian or this incredible basketball player, these people have money and power and celebrity, and they're depressed. How is it possible? And people start to realize that it is not correlated with your success in life.
I funded this movie, or it's a documentary. It's not out yet, but it's called The Weight of Gold, and it's really unbelievable. I mean,
is it about Phelps?
Phelps is one of the executive producers,
oh,
but unbelievable number of Olympic athletes that did enormous number of interviews talking about depression, suicide. I mean, just the fact that when you've spent your whole life working out every single day, and then you get to winning the gold, and then you're famous for like a week, and then it's gone.
Postpartum, like of a level.
Yeah. You either loved the actual sort of struggle to get there, or you didn't. You were only focused on the gold. So when you hit that moment and then there was nothing after it, life means nothing.
Yeah.
Versus some of them really love actually the struggle part, and they're like, no, everything's cool.
Yeah.
You know? And so there's it doesn't matter what type of athlete you are, or whether you're an entrepreneur, high performer, the risk is just enormously high.
It's so interesting. I used to run marathons, and I always had post New York City Marathon depression.
Makes total sense.
And I don't have I'm not an anxious or depressed person, but I remember acutely I would be very sad on the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, because I'd be like, this is over. All that training, it's gone.
Yeah.
And I have the medal. I just sit there and look at the medal and say, what now?
Yeah.
And then eventually I started to realize, well, I could have run the Hawaiian or the Boston Marathon, or I could cherish the journey and the enjoyment of doing the 12, the 15, the 18-mile runs.
Yeah.
And it was not final, and I was able to process it, but I do remember it was one of the few times I felt depression in my life.
Yeah.
And then after 9/11, I had PTSD very strongly, but undiagnosed.
Yeah.
And I had to get treated for it. It took me like 2 or 3 years that I needed to get treated for it. I don't think I've ever told the story here, but I used to just cry when I would hear an ambulance sometimes. I'd have to excuse myself.
Makes total sense.
Because I would get triggered. I'd think about people falling out of the building.
Yep.
And that's me, Jason Calacanis. I'm a strong guy. I can handle it.
That's a real thing. I mean,
that is a real thing. When
there were people that weren't in New York that feel that way, right?
Yeah. No,
I can't even imagine being there, honestly.
Well, and then if you have a brother who's a firefighter and your grandfather was a firefighter, it hits very close to home when your brother is calling you. Because my brother would call me and say, "Oh, how is your day?" And he'd say, "Oh, I was he's in the honor guard." He's like, "Yeah, I had 2 honor guards today. I had 3 honor guards today." I was like, he would go to Queens, to Staten Island, to Brooklyn, 10 a.m.
So hard.
1 p.m., 4 p.m., just to have 100 firefighters line up for another funeral. It was brutal.
Gnarly.
When we get back from this quick break, I want to talk to you about what are the ways founders can get help? Because since we're here at this moment, I think this is a unique opportunity for us to talk about how founders can get help when they're feeling this, especially from their investors and angels who have been through it before when we get back on Angel. Hiring is always hard, and it's getting really hard today because we've got unemployment at historic lows. Also, many people just throw a job posting out there. They put it on their job board or some random message board or dump it in your Slack room. That's not going to work. It's not going to work. But what is going to work is to go ahead and use LinkedIn. LinkedIn is where 610 million members visit, and they do that to make connections, learn and grow as professionals. And sometimes they're looking to discover new job opportunities, or sometimes they're passive job seekers. And that is the secret. Not everybody's going to a job board every day looking for jobs, but LinkedIn will present opportunities to those hundreds of millions of LinkedIn users. And here's how easy it is. You just simply go to LinkedIn, and it's really easy because you say where you're looking for the person, you put in your job, you can then look for what experiences you want them to have. How many years of marketing, you set a budget, boom, it's up and running, and you will find somebody quickly. How do I know this? Because we found 2 of our 15 team members on LinkedIn very recently. Sir Charles, our new director, and our marketing manager, Morin. You can create these job listings quickly and easily, and to get $50 off right now, a 50, okay? 50 for your first job posting. Go to linkedin.com/angel, A-N-G-E-L. You know how to spell angel. That's linkedin.com/angel, and you will get $50 off your first job posting. Terms and conditions apply, of course. Now, let's get back to this amazing podcast. All right, welcome back to Angel, the podcast where we talk about angel investing, but we spent the first 25 minutes of this podcast talking with my good friend Dave Morin about Facebook, social media, the internet, anxiety, depression, my PTSD, his anxiety and depression, and how to contend with it. And we're going to get into the angel investing part, and you're really in for a treat because it's very rare to have somebody on the podcast who is as good or better of an investor than I am, and this is one of those few instances. Robinhood, Twitter, Pinterest, Blue Bottle, Slack, Stripe, Postmates, Venmo, Airbnb, Dropbox, Wealthfront, Quora, Casper, Airtable, Earl Birds, and he's on the board of Eventbrite, which recently went public. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
You and I deal with founders who are calling us on the phone. I had one call me one day crying in the shower and said, I just puked. And I said, where are you? He said, I'm in my bathroom. I said, where's your family? And he said, downstairs waiting in the car, and I can't move.
Yeah.
And I said, you know what? We could shut this company down, get you a job somewhere, and then in 2 years start another one.
Yep.
It's just a video game. We can put another quarter in and hit the reset button. Don't worry about it. I'll back you for the next 3 companies. You're a winner in my book.
Yep.
But it was one of the most shocking experiences to me because I had given everybody this speech after seeing the founder of EcoMom killed himself, sadly.
Oh, yeah. Forgot about
Jody Sherman. Yeah. And then the founder of Austin Hines from Cambrian
Sciences or something
Cambrian
like that.
Sciences.
Yeah.
Both of them have been on the genetics. Yeah. Both of them had been on the podcast.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, well, when you think about it, if you have 1,000 people on your podcast, which is what we've had after 10 years, over 1,000, you're going to have 2 people. Actually, if you think about it, 1 in 500 would be way, way higher indexing than in America. Is it 1 in 100,000 or something suicide rate? Jackie, look it up. Austin Hines, what should they do? When you're feeling depressed, when you're feeling anxiety, what have you learned for you, for people you work with, is the right thing to do?
I think number 1, you should have a coach.
Yeah.
Number 1, like out of the gate. If you're a founder, you need to treat yourself like an Olympic athlete. And, an athlete, whether you're a Warriors athlete or a Olympic athlete that's a solo sports, you don't go into it without a coach, right? And some kind of infrastructure that's helping to not just like make sure that you're like sort of okay, but they're like actually actively in the game with you and trying to help you make sure that you're performing at a high level, but also helping you understand like this is really hard, right? Like, if you actually talk to professional athletes, they've got meditation coaches and yoga coaches and
a masseuse
nutritionist and nutrition and cold plunges. I mean, all kinds of stuff, right? And so I think founders need to take it a lot more seriously that their health is number one, right? We've kind of got this culture where we give people an enormous amount of money, fill their company's bank account with millions of dollars. They've never managed that before. That's an instant pressure cooker on top of, the narratives and the people sort of barking at you every day about success and yada, yada. And so I think you need to have a therapist or a coach, somebody who's really trained in this stuff. Like that's number one. And so that's like your preventative medicine, right? And then when things actually get really hard, I mean, ideally you've got people either on your board or angel investors like you and me that are people that you can call and actually be honest with. I've always tried to be that person around the founders that I'm with, and named Slow Ventures for that reason.
Take it easy. There's no rush here.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I always tell people, like, when you're starting a company, you better be ready to spend 10 years and 10,000 lunch and dinners talking about the same thing. So it's going to be a really long journey, right?
Yeah. Pace yourself.
Yeah, I mean, look, Uber just went public. Like, we both were in those rooms, right? Like
10 years.
10 years ago, I think it was your dinner that like
Open
a lot
Angel
of us
Forum.
met them, right?
Yeah.
And
you were there for the Open Angel Forum that time?
I was there that night.
Wow, but you didn't invest or you did?
Don't even get me started on the Uber story. I was in the...
Go ahead, we're started now.
I was in the Airbnb with Travis and Garrett and Melody in Paris.
You're kidding.
Not joking.
And you passed. See, I have a similar story because I wasn't an angel investor. Were you angel investing actively back then?
No, see, that's the thing. So I didn't start till late 2009 and I was broke. I was full out broke in 2008. And I literally looked up the email on the IPO day and I was like,
yep.
I have this email with like Garrett, Travis, and Melody, like, Dave, you're sleeping on the couch, and me saying, what? I have to sleep on the couch. And, and it's like,
stop crying.
We were in Paris and
Garrett was jamming on the idea, right?
Yeah. I mean, that was literally, we couldn't get cabs.
So amazing.
And so, it was like across Paris. We were in like the wrong,
It's so funny because on this podcast, they just produced a clip from the 2011, and he says, I was in Paris, and I would get a bunch of founders to stay at an Airbnb. I'd always host everybody, and we were just jamming on ideas every night. And Garrett said, we can't get cabs. We should be like able to push a button. We should hire, we should buy 5 limos, hire 5 drivers, and just do like a time sharing. Because people don't realize that the original idea for Uber was time sharing,
so
like
I also
time sharing
have that
houses
email.
And time sharing.
I literally have that email.
Yeah, the time sharing concept.
I have an email after I got back from that Paris trip from Travis that says, hey man, we bought these cars. Like, do you want to go in on it with us? And I was literally broke. Yeah. I was literally broke because everyone at Facebook
negotiated the advisor agreement.
Well, but
10 basis points.
This kind of shows how fast maybe you can learn something in Silicon Valley. Like, I didn't know anything about this stuff, like angel investing in 2008. No. Like, I was still in the middle of building Facebook platform, and Facebook only had 50 million users. We were hot, but it wasn't like this foregone conclusion. And we actually spent most of 2008 with a flatlining growth curve.
Wow.
And so I was like,
I got my own problems.
This was like the last thing I was thinking about, right? Yeah. And I was like, I can't afford to go in on half of a car right now. Yeah. I can't even afford my own car, right?
And I am now just programmed to say yes.
Yeah, no.
I realize when you say yes as an angel investor, this will be a good segue for us. You know what you're going to lose. 50,000, 100,000, 250, 5,000, whatever it is. When you say no, you have no idea what you've lost.
Yeah.
Could be 100 million, could be $1 billion, could be...
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's a hard one.
But we can't complain because you get a lot of make goods in this business.
No, yeah. I mean...
Let's get into it.
Maybe come back to more resources for founders later, but yeah.
Oh yeah, so wait, more resources. No, let's do it.
Yeah, there was just like, you sort of asked like what else. I said that
coach is important.
You should have a coach.
Investors you can lean on.
Investors you can lean on, but beyond that, I've invested in some great companies. Brightside is one of the ones that I did recently, which it does digital diagnostics. So you can go on there, you take a test. It figures out what your depression or anxiety level is. If you are, using these standardized tests in the range, then they'll prescribe it for you and ship it to your door, and then provide you with text-based and video therapy. So you can get
What's the name of it
the
again?
medication, Brightside.
Brightside.com?
Yeah.
Very cool.
So you can get it from afar and no stigma.
Oh.
And we did this mostly to expand access across the whole country.
Yeah.
But I do think it's important that people know that there's starting to be some really wonderful resources.
Get help.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the big thing is people have so much pride. I think our generation, we're both Gen Xers. It was kind of like there was a stigma.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
And we were the first generation where you could be out at dinner and somebody would be like, what are you taking? It's like, I'm taking my Prozac.
Yeah.
And because Prozac kind of emerged
Yeah.
in the 90s.
Yep.
And I remember my friends, I was like, whoa, what's that like? And they'd
Yep.
be like, well, some days I wake up and I'm in a fog. And then some days I wake up and I want to take on the world. And
Yeah.
that's the difference. And I'm like, really? I don't get it. But okay, I don't need to get it, I guess. And now these kids, I mean, I think they want to self-medicate before they've even had the problem or even
Yeah.
tried exercise or going
Yeah.
for a run or going for turning off their device.
Yeah.
People should start with exercise, diet,
Yeah.
and friendship, right?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing that I say to people. Like, there's sort of a spectrum. You can be sort of -10, right? Like suicidally depressed, or
Yeah.
you can be +10, total thriving, right? And different tools for different people. But
Right.
if you're way down here on -10, that's one thing.
Make
if you're
a phone
at sort
call.
of neutral,
Yeah, check
kind
yourself
of
in.
sliding, there's some important things like eat less sugar, eat less alcohol. Sugar is one of the things that people do not realize has an enormous impact on depression, anxiety, ADD. I mean, reduce the sugar.
I wonder
Less
what's
alcohol.
actually causing that. Is it the mania that it gives you or the dopamine? I wonder what the
No,
scientific...
We could get really into the science, but it would take a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, just less sugar, less alcohol, more plants in your diet. Like you don't have to get fundamentalist about, don't
Steak
eat
or
meat or
not.
whatever. It's just
More
try
plants,
to eat more.
more green.
Yeah. The number one thing I tell people is yoga and meditation. Like
yeah.
meditation, you can download apps, but if you can do yoga, if this is something you're really struggling with, especially as a founder, like start going to yoga, allocate the time. Like,
Yeah, it's an hour and a half. There
people
were
always say, I don't have
45-minute
time for
classes.
this stuff, right? And I always say people, startups will consume all available time. So design your life first for your health, then let the startup consume the rest of the time.
Yes.
And so like, I think that's really important. And yes, prioritizing your relationship. If you're married, if you have a girlfriend, or boyfriend, date nights, non-negotiable, right? Like make sure that your social life is built in. And those kinds of things matter. And maybe the last thing that I'll say is that there's a huge trend right now. Everybody is talking about psychedelics.
Yeah.
At Sunrise, we funded a lot of the phase 2 trials. Psilocybin,
MDMA.
Tim Ferriss and I did a lot of work around that.
Yeah.
And these are important tools, but it's important that you use them with therapists that know what they're doing. And
Taking them at a rave is not the
bad
proper
idea.
use.
Yeah. And look, I'm not going to give people life prescription, but
No, but
to the extent that if this is a route you want to go, all the microdosing talk, all of this stuff is nonsense. Like work with a therapist that knows what they're doing, especially if you're down at -10. Like, these tools are really, really useful. They're safe. They're powerful. They're moving their way through the FDA.
Yeah.
But make sure you're working with a therapist
read the
that know
Michael
what they're doing.
Pollan book.
Yeah.
A whole new mind. What is the Michael Pollan book?
How to Change Your Mind.
How to Change Your Mind.
Yeah.
It's a great book because he's in the 60s
Yeah.
and he embraced psychedelics and he got a massive amount out of it.
Yeah.
And there are ketamine trials right now at Stanford
Yeah.
where people who have manic depression, like cannot get out of bed, are at a suicidal risk.
Yep.
They're taking IVs
Yep.
and it's not permanent, but it is alleviating them to a
works.
level for weeks.
Yep. Yeah.
with
We sit
ketamine
on the board
drips.
of the Ketamine Research Foundation at Sunrise.
Yeah.
And my co-founder is she's my age, our age, but she spent her whole life in neuroscience at Columbia. She's one of the world experts, and she's probably done more animal trials of ketamine, and it really works. But just make sure you're working with a therapist that's doing it in the right format. Don't go to these infusion centers that are doing it like dialysis. Find a real psychiatrist that's doing ketamine-assisted psychotherapy.
Right.
And
Because you're adding to it the conversation, the context.
Yeah.
And then Michael Pollan talks about
Really
this in his
important.
book. It's super important that you go into it with the right expectations and intentions,
Yes.
and you're doing it in the right location,
Yes.
with the right dose,
Yes.
with the right person who has experience with it. This is not something to just take a handful of
Yes.
mushrooms and go to Burning
Yes.
Man.
Yes.
That's, I mean, it could be fun, sure,
Yes.
but that's not for therapeutic purposes.
This is important. And
Yeah.
I think, I guess I wanted to say it here because you asked the question,
Yeah.
because this is a trend. Everyone's talking about it around
Sure.
town. And yes, they're good tools, but make sure you're working with somebody who knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
And don't think of it as, brain surgery. Like you're
Right.
going in to do
Yeah.
something. And the other thing that I would say is, as I've been going down this journey, one of the things that I was sitting in the back of Columbia University with the guy who invented he didn't invent, but he discovered the serotonin receptor.
Right.
And I said to him, "Do you think we're ever going to find a silver bullet?"
Yeah.
And he said, "No, absolutely not. Depression and anxiety are wrapped up in memory and learning." And when you think about what these things are, they are traumas, they're memories that
Sure.
somebody's been dwelling on maybe for 20 years.
Right. They're
That
not even
means-
aware of it.
Yeah, and that means that they not only do they have software running, they have hardware. And
Yeah.
he literally pulled out brain scans and was showing me, see these dendrites that's
Yeah.
like the little tentacle-looking things in
Right.
your brain?
This is when your parents got in a fight. This is when you got robbed. This is when your
it's
car
literally
crashed.
a physical structure. Like
Yeah.
we keep talking about the brain in Silicon Valley like it's software.
Right.
It's not. It's
It's
software and hardware and electricity and chemicals, right?
Yeah.
And in order to actually change things, psychedelics or silent meditation retreats or any of these altered state experiences that you can do might show you your trauma.
Yeah.
But in order to improve it, you actually have to set to training. It's no different than running a marathon.
Right.
If you were going to run a marathon next week and you weren't in shape,
I did it one time.
it'd be not fun.
Well, I did a 5.5 hour marathon one time. Somebody gave me their number like 2 weeks before. I did no training. I did one 3-mile run, and then I did it.
And you're
It was the
hurting.
oh my God. I
right?
couldn't walk for 2 weeks, man. It was
Totally.
it was super painful.
You have
and
to change your
I
muscles.
puked multiple times.
Right? You have to literally change the structure
Yes,
of your muscles. And
absolutely.
the brain's no different.
Yeah.
And so that's why yoga, meditation, are so valuable, because they actually increase your
Yeah.
resilience, just like you increase the resilience of your muscle.
Yeah.
And after you go through one of these experiences, you need to treat it as such that, okay, now I know my trauma. Don't keep going back to do these experiences over and over again, just to like re-experience your trauma over and over again.
Well, that's it for now. Join us next time for part 2, when David and Jason discuss how with some founders, success is an inevitability, and with others, they just know not to invest. Plus, Dave breaks down why he thinks there's going to be 2 internets.